eBay just released some very important sales data for sports cards in 2020, and I'm going to talk about the top sports and some of the top cards that sold on the platform last year. If you've been into sports cards at all in 2020, a lot of the numbers that eBay just released are going to make a lot of sense to you. And I think it's important to highlight that in December, the eBay, their marketing manager in charge of sports cards, was on the Sports Card Investors podcast. I think they were doing some event, and they had the eBay marketing manager in charge of sports cards on, and they laid out some numbers, and these numbers are different than those numbers. And if I had to guess, the main difference is going to be that the numbers that were laid out in December, which if you listen to the podcast probably at some point in January, I talked about these numbers not being super surprising, but they were different. And I think the difference is that the numbers from December/January when I talked about it, I think those were total sales numbers, and these are pricing of the numbers. So I'm just going to lay out, you can see it on the screen here. So soccer, 1,586% growth. Basketball, 373% growth. Hockey, 258% growth. Football, 168, and baseball was 73. So to lay out those numbers that I talked about before, soccer was 310, basketball was 386. I didn't put hockey when I was reporting those numbers before, but football was 99, and then baseball was 101. So I think what is important here is to point out that yes, baseball may be fifth and last on this list when it comes to the growth of that sport, but I think baseball, if you look at like the PSA numbers, that sport is like the biggest sport in sports cards in general. And I think that it's going to take a while for either basketball or soccer or football, if they're ever going to try and take that top spot. I don't think it's going to take a year. Like, I think we are going to start to see basketball close the gap on baseball if they don't start making some pretty significant changes, which I think they may. They just brought Theo Epstein into the main office, which if you know who Theo Epstein is, he broke two curses. Like, he broke the Red Sox curse and he broke the Cubs curse. So, maybe he breaks the curse of people not caring about the sport of baseball. Maybe that's something that he does. And also, I think some more important numbers that I think are up on the screen here. So I'm just going to be talking about the sports card stuff because there was some Pokemon that they included in this report, but I'm basically just going to be talking about sports cards because that's where I have more knowledge on. I have collected and I have bought and sold Pokemon cards, but, I don't think it's enough, in my opinion, to really talk about it and really give in-depth detail on what I think is going to be, some of the more important stuff. So for sports cards specifically, total sales went up 142%, and there were 4 million more cards sold in 2020 than in 2019. So, you put those numbers into perspective, it's probably 1.5 million sports cards sold in 2019, and then in 2020 that probably gets it around. Or they said more, but I've seen a number that said it was total 4 million. So that's, I think, important, and I think it's also important that eBay put out this data. Like, I think that I'm not super familiar with other industries that use eBay as essentially their only, or at least their biggest marketplace. Like, I think collectibles and memorabilia stuff, but sports cards is probably a lot bigger, or at least maybe more broad. Maybe not bigger, because I'm sure there's memorabilia and autograph stuff that's sold on there that could be more expensive than sports cards. But I would say overall, looking at these numbers and the fact that eBay came out with this data, I think it's important that eBay is acknowledging that sports cards are becoming more and more popular within the space, and I think it's important for people, like, if you're eBay, for example, if sports cards if it's your biggest market, which I think it is, I'm not 100% sure, but I'd have to say, based on these numbers, I feel like it probably is. If people are trying to get into sports cards and they're looking for either, where to buy, where to sell, and if you're eBay and you can say, hey, we had 6 million cards sold, or 4 million, whatever the number ends up being. I'm not 100% sure if it was the 4 million more than 2019, if that makes it 6 million, or if it was 4 million in 2020, because like I said, I saw the 4 million number, so I'm not 100% sure there. But if you are eBay and you're saying that, you're trying to tell consumers that, hey, come to our platform, because basically anything that you're looking for, you're probably going to be able to find on our platform because of the growth that we've seen across almost every single sport. And like I said, the 73% sales growth of baseball may seem like a low number, but when you consider that baseball is the largest sport within the hobby, and I kind of put out that poll, and because when the numbers originally came out, this was kind of a question that I had for people, like, at what point does basketball become the most popular sport in the hobby compared to what baseball is right now? And a lot of people were saying that it is, and I just don't necessarily think that's true. I think that baseball right now is still the most popular sport when it comes to sports cards, and I think, the 73% growth is on 73% growth of the biggest market compared to the 373 on what was probably, it was the second, but the gap was much wider. And same with soccer too. Like, saying that soccer grew 1,586% is absolutely insane. But if you were to look at the market, and I mean, I think a decent example is looking at that Ronaldo card that recently sold through Golden Auctions. And I know it didn't sell on eBay, but that card specifically, it sold almost a year to the day when it previously had sold on eBay for, I think it was $4,950 or something like that for the PSA 10 2003 Mega Cracks. And then it goes to Golden Auctions and it sells for 205 or 210K. So that growth and that percentage makes a lot of sense when you look at it. And I think the amount of cards that sold on eBay with soccer, I think definitely, it grew, and that, like I said, it doesn't surprise me that number is so large. And I also don't think that really, like, you might look at the number and say 1,500%, that's how much it grew. You may look at that card and say, well, it must be the most popular. And it probably is still third or fourth. And actually, the number that I'm most surprised about is hockey on this list. We did see the sale of the O-Pee-Chee Gretzky for $1.2 million. Obviously not on eBay, but I'm just kind of talking in general about hockey. Like, I think hockey is sneaky, potentially going to become one of the more popular sports. I think the market itself, and I have pretty general knowledge on the hockey market. It's definitely not something that I've dove into and really looked into pricing and looked into trends across the sport itself. But one thing that I think is interesting about the sport is that, the Young Guns card from basically going back to probably either the Sidney Crosby or the Alex Ovechkin, that's like the one card. Like, if you look at within baseball or basketball, there's a bunch of different cards. And in hockey, there are a bunch of different cards as well. But for the most part, you're going to be looking at that one card as the main card that everybody can agree on. Like, if you're looking at baseball, some people might say it's the first Bowman Chrome rookie. Some people might say it's the Topps Chrome rookie when they get to the majors. Some people might say it's the flagship rookie. There are a bunch of different cards that I think different people can categorize. But with hockey, it's pretty much that one card. And that's actually something that I've talked about in the past with hockey and with Young Guns. It's something that I wish that Topps would do more of to help collectors, because I put out this type of podcast a couple times, and one of them, I think the title was "Why Are Sports Cards So Confusing?" And the other one was just saying that Topps should adopt something like a Young Guns rookie into their type of product, where they're saying, this is the card, this is the rookie card that's in our base set that you were going to want to get. And instead of coming out with, some players have a rookie card in Series 2 and Topps Update, or some players have rookie cards in Series 1 and Topps Update. And I think that they should change that to where they only get the one card in across the set. They need to determine the card they're going to put on the full checklist. And I don't think short printing the card does them any good, realistically, because I think it makes it more confusing. Like the Ronald Acuna and the Vladimir Guerrero Jr., they had short prints in Series 2 and then a regular rookie in Topps Update. That just confuses things, and I think that almost steers people away from baseball, because they don't know exactly what they're buying. Like, they don't know if that's the correct one. Like, and that's just even from my experience. Like, when I got back into sports cards, I looked at these baseball rookie cards, and I didn't know exactly which was going to be the one that was going to be the most important. So that's why I think that if baseball were to adopt that type of system within their flagship product, and I think it would be hard, or to even come up with some sort of platform. This was another kind of idea that I had, was if Topps were to come out and they were to put together a platform that said, this is the rookie card that you want to get from flagship. If they were to come out and say that, that would be, I think, that would help a ton for new collectors, and it would help people really understand the market probably a little bit better. And the last point that I'm going to talk about on this episode of the video and the podcast and all that stuff is going to be the Brady. eBay also highlighted 2 cards that I think are important for people to know about when it comes to sports cards in the hobby. So in 2019, 2 of the top 3 items that sold on eBay were actually sports cards. Number 1 was actually like a $2 million, I think it was a lunch that you could get with Warren Buffett. And then there was a Brady card that sold for $400,000. And then there was a Michael Jordan card that I believe sold for $350,000. So in 2020, the top 2 cards was a Brady Contenders autograph. There was a PSA 10 that sold for $555,000. It almost, I think it was $555,998. So it was almost, in that next thousand, but I just rounded down. And then the next card was a Kobe Refractor PSA 10 that sold for $500,000. So we saw a Kobe Refractor sell through Golden Auctions that was very similarly priced. And then there was another one that sold on eBay actually more recently. I don't remember exactly when the Brady sold for $555,000. I remember that PWCC did have that card up for $1 million. I believe a strategy that PWCC is using to get higher prices on some of their cards is that they have, because I think they did this with the Joe Montana rookie. They have a card that's listed as a buy it now, and then they have a card that runs for a buy it now for like a pretty high price, and then they have an auction that runs, and then they just end up repricing the card for what the auction price sold. And I think it's an interesting strategy for them to kind of do that. I don't necessarily know if it's getting the most value from the card as they can, but I think it's kind of interesting. But yeah, so those were the 2 top cards that sold on eBay, sports cards that sold on eBay in 2020. I think it's going to be another crazy year for sports cards, so I'm excited to see what these numbers look like. I think we saw a crazy boom on eBay and in sports cards in 2020, and I guess it's going to be interesting to see kind of where the hobby goes and what ends up happening in this upcoming year of 2021. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, and if you have any comments, make sure you leave... Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, and if you have any thoughts on what I talked about in this video, make sure you drop a comment.